World War I was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918, involving many of the world's major powers. It was the first modern war, involving the use of new technologies such as tanks, airplanes, and machine guns. The war claimed millions of lives, both military and civilian, and its consequences had far-reaching effects that shaped the course of the 20th century. In this essay, we will examine the causes of World War I, the major events of the war, and its aftermath. Causes of World War I. There were many factors that led to the outbreak of World War I, including political, economic, and social tensions that had been building for decades. Some of the major causes of the war include imperialism. As European nations expanded their empires in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they often came into conflict with each other over resources, territories, and influence. These tensions contributed to the formation of alliances that would later become important in the war. Nationalism. The rise of nationalism in Europe also played a role in the outbreak of World War I. Many ethnic groups were seeking greater independence and autonomy, and some sought to unify with their fellow countrymen in other parts of Europe. This led to tensions and conflicts between different national groups. Militarism. Many countries in Europe had been building up their military capabilities for years, leading to an arms race that contributed to the outbreak of war. Military leaders often held significant political power, which could lead to an emphasis on military solutions to political problems. Alliances. In the years leading up to the war, a complex system of alliances had developed among the major European powers. These alliances were intended to provide security and deter potential aggressors, but they also meant that a conflict between two countries could quickly escalate into a much larger war. Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in Sarajevo in 1914 was the trigger that set off the war. The assassination was carried out by a member of a Serbian nationalist group, and it led to a chain reaction of events that eventually resulted in the outbreak of war. Major events of World War I. The war was fought on multiple fronts, with major battles taking place in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Here are some of the key events of the war. The Schlieffen Plan. At the beginning of the war, Germany implemented the Schlieffen Plan, a military strategy that called for a rapid invasion of France through Belgium. The plan was intended to quickly defeat France and then turn to face the Russian army, which was expected to take longer to mobilize. The plan failed, however, when the German army was held up at the Battle of the Marne. Trench warfare. As the war progressed, both sides dug in and created a network of trenches that stretched from the English Channel to Switzerland. Trench warfare was characterized by long periods of stalemate, with soldiers living in miserable conditions and facing constant danger from enemy fire. The Battle of the Somme. In 1916, the Allies launched a major offensive against the German lines near the Somme River in France. The battle was one of the bloodiest in history, with over 1 million casualties on both sides. The Battle of Jutland. In 1916, the British and German navies clashed in the North Sea in the largest naval battle of the war. Although the battle was inconclusive, it marked the end of Germany's attempt to challenge British naval supremacy. The Russian Revolution. In 1917, the Russian Revolution overthrew the Tsarist government and led to the establishment of the Soviet Union. The revolution had major implications for the war, as the new government under Vladimir Lenin signed a peace treaty with Germany, ending Russia's involvement in the conflict. The United States enters the war. In 1917, the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies, marking a major turning point in the conflict. The US was able to provide fresh troops and resources, helping to tip the balance in favor of the Allies. The 100 Days Offensive. In 1918, the Allies launched a series of offensives that would eventually lead to Germany's defeat. The 100 Days Offensive was a coordinated effort to break through the German lines and push them back towards their own borders. Armistice and Treaty of Versailles. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed between the Allies and Germany, bringing an end to the fighting. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, formally ended the war and imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including reparations, territorial losses, and limitations on its military capabilities. Impact and aftermath of World War I. World War I had a profound impact on the world, both during and after the conflict. Here are some of the key ways in which the war shaped the course of history. Human toll. World War I was one of the deadliest conflicts in history, with an estimated 16 million people killed and 21 million wounded. The war had a devastating impact on families and communities, and its effects were felt for generations. Political changes. The war led to significant political changes in Europe, including the collapse of empires and the emergence of new nations. The Treaty of Versailles redrew the map of Europe, creating new borders and nations. Technological advances. The war spurred significant advances in technology, including the development of tanks, airplanes, and chemical weapons. These technologies would have a profound impact on future conflicts. Economic impact. The war had a major impact on the global economy, leading to inflation, unemployment, and financial instability. The cost of the war was enormous, and it took years for many countries to recover. Rise of totalitarianism. The aftermath of the war also saw the rise of totalitarian regimes in Europe, including Fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and Soviet Russia. These regimes would play a major role in shaping the course of the 20th century. Conclusion. World War I was a catastrophic event that had a profound impact on the world. The causes of the war were complex and multifaceted, but they ultimately led to a conflict that claimed millions of lives and reshaped the political, economic, and social landscape of Europe. The war marked the beginning of a new era of global conflict, one in which technological advances and political ideologies would play a greater role than ever before. Although the war ended over a century ago, its legacy continues to be felt in the world today. Women's suffrage. The war also had a significant impact on women's suffrage, as women played an important role in the war effort and demonstrated their capabilities to the world. This led to increased support for women's rights, and several countries granted women the right to vote following the war. Disillusionment and lost generation. The war left a generation of soldiers traumatized and disillusioned, leading to the emergence of the lost generation of writers and artists who grappled with the meaninglessness of the war and the loss of a generation of young men. International organizations. The war led to the formation of several international organizations, including the League of Nations, which aimed to prevent future conflicts through diplomatic means. While the League ultimately failed to prevent the outbreak of World War II, it set the stage for the formation of the United Nations after the end of World War II. Influence on World War II. World War I had a significant impact on the outbreak and conduct of World War II. The harsh penalties imposed on Germany through the Treaty of Versailles contributed to the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany, which in turn led to the outbreak of World War II. Legacy. The legacy of World War I continues to be felt today, both in Europe and around the world. The war's impact on global politics, society, and culture cannot be overstated, and its memory remains a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences of war. In conclusion, World War I was a transformative event in world history, with far-reaching political, economic, and social consequences. Its causes were complex and multifaceted, and its impact was felt in virtually every corner of the globe. While the war ultimately came to an end, its legacy continues to be felt to this day, as the world continues to grapple with the consequences of one of the deadliest conflicts in human history.